Okay, so here we are at our penultimate
So,
perennial. Yes.
so we're doing another batch of these film reviews, these shot in the dark, gas in the tank film reviews. Film reviews. What we did Wes Anderson's French Dispatch before, and now we're gonna follow up with Asteroid City,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then we're gonna do The Godfather because you've never seen it, and it just
Yeah.
was a goof.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then that was about it, right? Did you see Oppenheimer or Barbie?
no, I didn't see either of those. And
I
also,
saw
yeah,
both. I saw Barbieheimer. I did see Barbieheimer. I
yeah,
saw both.
you did the
Oh, I
bang
told you.
bang.
I did the double feature, yeah, the Bang Bang. And then I did the like a week before that, or no, at the end of June, I saw on opening day Asteroid City. But then after Asteroid City, I saw Indiana Jones because I didn't love
Oh
Asteroid
wow.
City. Love Indiana Jones. Asteroid City, I didn't love.
Hmm.
It was kind of awkward.
Yeah.
It was like sort of staging was rough shot. It didn't really feel like it was actually that composed as a mise
Hmm.
en scène
Yeah.
for most of the sequences. And even though the sequences were very like, static and the acting was stoic and the movement was just overall minimalized in every possible conceivable way,
Yeah.
the picture was always just kind of like you felt like it was just like a stenciled out sort of graffiti art level
Hmm.
of like quality. I
Hmm.
mean, obviously the frame were respectable, and then the actual like background, the scenery was really good. I think the art department killed it on this,
Yeah.
but I just don't. I wasn't crazy about the cinematography as such. The it was never in media res. It was always just sort of. I always felt like it was staged too
Hmm.
much, overly staged.
Yeah.
Uh, the acting was wooden in many cases,
Yeah.
ham-fisted in some others. Tom Hanks, I felt like kind of overdid it. He was a little too likable,
Hmm.
a little too personable, I guess. Maybe not likable, but he had a little too much personality for being in the middle of everyone else who was pretty toned down.
Yeah.
He stood out too much, and kind of steamrolled the whole thing.
Hmm.
And then Adrian Brody's character was, I think, weakly written, although his acting was kind of excellent.
Hmm.
Um, who else is in this? Scarlett Johansson's character was sort of the acting wasn't my cup of tea. I could see how that style of acting could work in a different character, but I didn't like her portrayal.
Yeah.
Um, it was very like she felt very she was a little too intense. She could have dialed back the intensity and made herself more demure and approachable.
Yeah.
That would have lended maybe some realism to that character that wasn't there
Yeah.
in her portrayal. The performance by Jason Schwartzman was good enough.
Yeah.
I didn't have too many complaints. I had a hard time understanding what his role was in the context of the whole
What?
story. Jason Schwartzman to me felt like he was the main character because he was in so many scenes,
Oh
but at the
yeah.
same time he felt like an insignificant kind of write-off character. Like he really just had no
Yeah,
power.
I mean,
And
I kind of forgot. I kind of forgot who he was. I think okay. So who was the playwright? Was the playwright father Adrian Brody, or not the playwright father, but just the father who was very like, yeah. I'm looking at a trailer now. That was him. So then, who was Jason Schwartzman in the movie? Like, what was his like stated role? Oh wait, no. Oh wait, no shit. Jason Schwartzman is the put upon father. So then, who the hell's Adrian Brody?
Adrian Brody was the the acting whiz that would show up. He lived outside their immediate universe
Oh, in the black and white sort of quote real world, sort of
in the real world, yeah, the quote unquote real world, and he lived in a dressing room,
was yeah
and it was like it was poorly written. It was like a pastiche of something that no one understood,
yeah
and very meta, which is never really you don't want to be so obvious about it if you do it. And
yeah.
did Bomback co-write this?
I don't think so. Let me look it up.
Because I believe he co-wrote Barbie.
What?
Yeah, I don't know if he co-wrote this one.
Uh, oh wow, yeah, yeah. It looks like he did. Um,
Both films?
no, I'm sorry. He did Barbie.
Only Barbie. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
He's also an executive
he
on Barbie.
he also co-wrote The Life Aquatic and Fantastic Mr. Fox. But
As an aside, before we digress, I
yeah.
want you to know that I really want to see this White Noise movie he did.
Oh yeah,
You know the Don DeLeo book, the
yeah,
novel.
yeah.
I, I really want to see that. I might pirate it at some
Yeah.
point.
I mean,
Um,
I heard it wasn't that good. What's the
oh,
appeal?
you have it? Oh, well, it was on Netflix.
Yeah. They take it
Oh,
down or
dude,
what?
it was on. There's on box office. It made 79,000, and it cost 100 million.
Jeez.
So it's probably still on Netflix
Yeah.
because I would milk that thing. It was only made like a year ago. It's like last year.
Yeah.
It was released last year, but I wouldn't. I would be surprised if they took it down because they're probably milking it for every penny. If it
Well,
only made 80,000
yeah.
at the box office, it
Yeah,
cost 100.
but I mean like, these streaming films are not they're not meant to get box office returns. I'm not really sure what they're for. I guess they're,
Yeah, it's probably limited. It seems like limited release.
yeah, cuz you can't
Very limited, probably.
yeah, you can't really I don't know. Yeah, I guess you'd have to track it in terms of like new streamers. I mean, it's hard to it's hard to sort of figure out how to quantify the benefit to Netflix of one more really good movie or one more really bad movie, or benefit or detriment
Well,
respectively.
it was definitely I think that was a touchstone film, Barbie in different senses as well.
Yeah.
What, like, is Asteroid City? Would you consider like a landmark? I don't think so. It was promoted out the wazoo. I don't know about your area, but in
Yeah.
downstate New York, it was like
Yeah.
every bus and every train and every bus stop had like a poster of like
Yeah.
billboards had Asteroid City. It was like everywhere.
It was definitely it wasn't marketed that much that I could see. I feel like honestly
Okay.
Barbie and Oppenheimer, for what they are, it reminds me of like the presidential election where it's like months and months and months of hype, and it's like not really even that much of a big deal necessarily, like, or at the very least, like there have been things that were like way more of a bombshell that did not get like it just feels like people are really bored and like desperate, and so like this movie has to be I don't I'm just kind of it's not interesting to vent like at length, so
Well,
but the yeah.
you're exactly correct. The problem I have is that I'm so used to this sort of like the hype and the sensationalism.
Yeah.
It's really just like the new yellow journalism to me, but I'm
Hmm.
so used to it since
That's
since
interesting.
since growing since growing up with it, right? Like we have
Yeah.
that. I just feel like I expect them to be dumber than they actually are. Like I expect them to be
Oh yeah.
so
No, well
so
that's
backwards,
yeah.
retarded.
That's kind of
And
what
then when I watched
yeah.
it, I'm like pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, because it's not. Well, that's the weird thing. Like for me, like I honestly kind of miss. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example, but like I feel like there has been a time in recent history where like there were these big dumb box office. Well, I guess Endgame was like the apex of it. Big dumb box office events where like everyone went to it because it was the thing. It's like, oh, you got to see it. Everyone's got to see it, and I never saw it, but like you know that honestly that fun for the whole family bombastic thing is kind of more interesting to me than like this stuff, which frankly seems. I know it's dumb to judge it ahead of time, but it all just seems kind of middlebrow, which I really can't stand stuff that's like genuinely middlebrow or that seems that way to me. But but why? Well, this is kind of getting off topic, but like why are you so interested in white noise? In seeing white noise, I
Oh,
mean.
I like the pro style, DeLeo,
Yeah.
DeLilo, whatever it is. I liked it, and then
Mm,
I got out of the habit of reading literary fiction,
yeah.
which is sort of destitute on my part, but that destitution has lended me to appreciate a lot more in the cinematic domain, a lot of
Yeah.
arts that I wouldn't have appreciated if I was just reading books like a fucking musty librarian.
Yeah.
However, the Leo is one that kind of is like a crossover. Like I can kind of read it.
Yeah.
I can kind of I can kind of treat it like it's a movie still.
Yeah.
And I think it's because he's still alive. I think that's why it's more.
That's interesting.
um, more convivial for me as an experience.
Yeah.
And so with the fact that Noah Baumbach, who is one of my favorite directors working, um, made white noise is kind of crazy to me. And I always, people always are into like Philip Roth,
Yeah.
and to me Philip Roth and Don DeLeo were kind of like night and day, the day and night of,
Hmm.
of literary fiction.
Yeah.
But now it's like it's really just Don DeLeo. I think everyone died.
Yeah.
Who was heavyweight.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Totally. It's I agree. He's like the last sort of literary fiction
He's
guy
he,
in
he,
America.
he's like what was the last dinosaur, like the
Oh.
Cretaceous era
Oh.
dinosaurs?
I
They
don't
had
know.
like, you know what I mean? They had that one, like all the other dinosaurs were extinct, but then they had like a few like, like
The
run off
last. Yeah. I think also of Jonathan Franzen. He's like
runaway
he's
species.
still there for some reason.
Well, that guy is sort of like the conglomeration of those big wigs. He's like the newfangled like conglomeration
Hmm.
where they're all kind of thrown together into one,
Yeah.
and it's like, and I just don't feel like I feel like we're not really getting um the the diversity that we
Yeah.
used to have.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. It's I definitely agree. Yeah, and I really liked a few of Noah Baumbach's
Plus,
movies. I
plus,
think.
I've never been crazy about the name Jonathan. Every time I
Yeah.
mean, I had like a therapist for like 10 years as a child that I was like forced to go to,
Damn.
named Jonathan. And that was the most of Jonathan I ever interacted with, and I just felt like
You had your
that
fill.
name. It gave me. I also don't like the name Philip. I also don't like the name Philip or Jonathan. Um,
That's really
Jonathan is
funny.
probably worse. I feel like I can respect from a distance.
From afar.
Jonathan, I'm ambivalent. I'm just ambivalent.
That's great.
Uh,
That's really funny. Yeah, there's some names that just sort of rub you the wrong way, I guess. Um,
well, I don't have that name obviously, but to me it's a second-rate John.
yeah,
Like in the global hierarchy of names,
yeah,
it's like this secondary version of John,
yeah,
and it's also combined with Nathan, which is even worse name, I think. Nathaniel or Nathaniel.
yeah.
So it's like just very neurotic and skeevy
That's funny.
and
Yeah, it's like,
weaselly.
jeez.
Someone named Joe Nathan is just it's like the worst of both worlds. Never
That's
hang out with someone named Joe J-O.
yeah.
That's an embarrassing name.
That's
Like
great.
Joe Dirt. Anyway, so
That's great.
I, not to break apart the
Jeez.
the philology here, but
Yeah,
let's go into, and then Philip it means like horse lover.
yeah,
Or I guess to be eloquent, it's like the lover of horses.
yeah.
And but for brass, in the brass tax world, it's basically just like horse fucker. Sounds like to me. Who fucks horses, and I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
I
okay,
know.
cool.
It is a bit equisy, isn't it? Gee,
Equine,
yeah. Equophilic.
equus is the equusy isn't a word, right? But equus
It's that
is like the genus,
no.
the name for the genus.
Equus is the play that Daniel Radcliffe was in to try and break his typecasting after Harry Potter,
Well,
and
that's also true, but I think equus is like the genus for horses.
oh yeah, yeah, probably. I don't know.
It
That
is.
was not what I was thinking. Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, yeah,
But Daniel Radcliffe, I also don't like the name Daniel that much, but
yeah.
because to me Daniel is a very specific personality.
That's interesting.
Where someone named Daniel, Philip, okay, so Philip is like a really passive aggressive person that's smart. It's like trying to like it's like really passive aggressive, but also very shrewd
Yeah.
and power hungry. That's Philip.
Jeez. Yeah.
Daniel is someone that's like always stuck at an intermediate level, but
Hmm.
just can't admit it to themselves, and it's just and so it becomes like frustrated and annoying and just unlikable slightly.
Damn.
And it's kind of slimy. That's Daniel, and then Nathan is probably worse than Daniel. Nathan is like a dweeb
Yeah.
that doesn't know they're a dweeb,
Yeah.
and they thinks they're really cool. So it's honestly in the same sort of direction. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just at the lower end of the totem pole.
Yeah.
It's the same exact category of status. And then Philip, I think, is probably like a little bit above. Daniel, but I think Daniel might be more more substantial of like a
Well, less unpleasant, probably.
what do you call it? More substantial, more in the arena type of personality than Philip. Philip is a lot more strategic and
Yeah.
back
Sort of keeping their cards
back in the
close to their
saddle,
chest, huh?
and then Daniel is more tactical and boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's move on. I can't break apart these names without
Yeah.
losing my sanity.
Yeah. Um,
Oh yeah, Asteroid City. Yeah, I mean, great colors. I think that's why people watch these movies.
yeah.
It's like dumb people that can like pick up a hint of dialogue here or there
Yeah.
that they can sort of pawn off as memorable and important.
Yeah.
But it's all insignificant drivel, a lot of pablum.
Mm,
It's like repetitious, just sort of cliches and sort of like half-baked one-liners.
yeah.
And in some cases, it just the entire scene will fall flat. And Wes Anderson is known for this. Wes Anderson is sort of defining this right now.
Mm,
Paul Thomas Anderson does this too. But Paul Thomas Anderson, the characters are like kind of meant to be awkward. I
yeah.
feel like whereas this Wes Anderson, they're meant to be awkward too, but it's not as advertised.
Mm,
And in this one, they're awkward because the movie is weird,
yeah.
not because the situation is awkward. Like that's just how my gut wrenching
That's
feeling.
that's a that's a pretty subtle way to put it. I think you're kind of right. Like I feel like sometimes I don't know, but yeah, it's not as situational. I
Well, in
suppose.
P.T. Anderson, like you can make the same criticism of P.T. Anderson. I'm sure some have,
Yeah.
where it's like, yeah, artificially these characters are made to be dumber than they probably would be.
Yeah.
But I do think that in the P.T. Anderson film, at least the characters look like people. Whereas in a Wes Anderson film, they don't even really aren't even set up to look like people. And then
Yeah.
and I think Wes Anderson might be more cowardly about his inclinations and his appetites for this sort of thing than P.T. Anderson is.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that P.T. Anderson is the superior filmmaker? Not in every case. I do think, in terms of verisimilitude or veracity or what have you, or realism or naturalism, any pick your word, right?
Yeah.
Word of the day. I think P.T. Anderson is a lot more. He embraces those things. He
Yeah.
embraces those qualities, whereas Wes Anderson is afraid of realism on some level. And I think the fear of realism that Wes Anderson has comes from the sort of boring provincial background he has. I think he's from Texas.
Yeah.
Or did he grow up somewhere else? I think he actually grew up somewhere else.
Well, it said
Maybe
he was.
Connecticut.
It said he was born in Texas, graduated from a school in Houston. Yeah, I kind of think he did grow up in Texas.
No, but he went to private school in like Connecticut. Right, he had to.
Uh, I don't think so. I don't see it.
Early life. St. John's, Houston.
He went to like a weird Texan private school.
Oh, he never was in Connecticut.
Well, that's the thing. He seems like the
Oh,
ultimate wasp, and so it's so weird that
weird.
he's not from New England at all. Like, you know.
Yeah, I always thought he spent like some time there. He was just like he was associated with New England.
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah.
probably why he's so like content with being this sort of fop. Because he's just if you're from Texas, like people are never gonna think you are a fop, and then if you try really hard to look like one, you'll
Yeah.
never be considered one. You'll never be proven right.
you,
And
you mean they'll always assume that you're not, and so you can try to be one as hard as you can, and it'll never get old. Because, yeah, that's interesting.
But I still think I appreciate this sheds new light on Asteroid City,
Yeah,
and I might actually like it a little more. But I still don't think it's like the best movie ever. It's
yeah,
funny to me though now that all the hot dog scenes, which I thought were like a pastiche,
yeah.
now I'm supposed to view them as like authentic. Like
Well,
it's
yeah,
like because he's from Texas. I don't think it changes it that much. I think he's taking this sort of dining car, and he's turning what was it anyway? It was like a small diner. It
oh
was
yeah,
portable. And
uh,
it was basically just like a tiny diner, like Marfa, Texas, out in the middle of West Texas somewhere, right?
yeah,
And in this movie it was New Mexico, which is close enough.
yeah,
And he uh he does this sort of matte sans serif uh,
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
uh, uh,
Pastel,
uh,
pink pastel.
well, that's the backdrop, but your front is it's front loaded with typeface,
Yeah,
and it's sort of sans serif. It's really matte. It's monochromatic.
yeah,
It doesn't really bulge out that much, but it does slightly, ever so slightly, that you don't feel like it's totally painted in.
yeah,
But it kind of is anyway. It's really just painted on.
yeah,
In many cases, in some cases, it's more of a science, but usually it's just painted on.
yeah,
And that's how people decorated restaurants and all sorts of service centers
yeah,
back in the day, retail, you know, stores back in the day. But I think he went over the top with it, as if he didn't have the leg room to kind of like move to like move angle, change angles or move setups, and he really just had to focus on one building the whole time.
yeah.
And that's kind of it's illuminating about Wes Anderson as a personality,
Hmm.
because it tells me that he kind of gets stuck in the same place, and he doesn't have the agility to jump out of the box.
Hmm.
And so when you see him just taking the same shots at the same building, and that building is starts to feel central, but then you find out that the building isn't central, because he only had like one scene really with it. He had like several scenes, but
Yeah,
they weren't very long
yeah,
and weren't very establishing with that restaurant. Now, if he had like 10 other buildings just like that you could focus in on, that would be high quality. But because he focuses in on that building overly so, and then the next scene is a residential scene, or the next scene is a scene out camping,
yeah,
or a scene is playing instruments by the picnic benches. Those are all good scenes, are well and good, but they don't establish the way that building did. Now, unfortunately, he only had one building to really use for it.
yeah.
So
So
that's my
yeah,
problem with Wes Anderson's directorial style, is that he can hire the best talent in the world, but then he gets them to do very minor accomplishments in his own films.
yeah,
And the other thing that really delivers this own in a conceptual way, not a physical way, is when he has all the genius kids hanging out and they're rattling off names of famous historical geniuses like Bose and
yeah,
uh, Gandhi, Napoleon, whoever they said a
yeah,
bunch of names, right?
yeah,
And they're all trying to sound smart by reiterating those names. Those names were like weird grab bag names. They're like,
yeah,
boy and girl geniuses wouldn't necessarily stitch together. And even in the 50s,
yeah.
those names are probably way less likely for them to pick.
Well, yeah,
They were
that's
sort of, what do you call it? Anachronistic, like, in a full blown type of way.
yeah,
So I felt like he really likes to burble up, bubbles in the froth and build froth. But
yeah,
then you just take a knife and you can brush away the froth in like an instant,
yeah,
and then clean the knife, and then it's gone forever. So his sort of like big momentous efforts, they sort of fall flat for me ultimately, because they just
yeah,
well, let me look up the dialogue while you say something about it,
yeah. Well,
and I'll because I want to figure out what those names were.
we were talking about the Grand Budapest Hotel one time, and I think I was saying it really impressed me at first when I saw it years ago, but then I saw it a few years later when I don't know, I'd like learned a little bit, just a little bit more about European history, and just get more of a sense of that world that he was trying to like imitate or whatever. And I realized, like, yeah, it's paper thin, like the it's very superficial. That and I think a lot of people like,
Well, it's modern preconceptions about how
yeah,
any historical person may or may have thought
yeah,
that ruin it. And we've talked about Grand Budapest Hotel a number of times, because
mm,
it's a phenomenal film. It
yeah,
represents something really unusual, in respect to what Hollywood tends to depict.
yeah,
It's a tour de force as a showcase, but what it showcases, and what it shows fundamentally is inaccurate.
yeah,
It's a mirage
yeah,
at the Oasis. So I felt strongly that his style is really kind of, like threadbare,
yeah,
paper thin. It's sort
yeah,
of more. It's sort of, it gives people the impression of sophistication,
yeah. That
and I
exactly.
I and the fact that he can make money off of that is kind of crazy.
Well,
Um,
it sort of reminds me actually, and this keeps coming up. It reminds me of like the New Yorker. Like I feel like it's this. It is this. It's not quite truly middlebrow, but it's like kind of on the edge of this like pseudo sophistication of where people sort of want to feel like erudite and cultured and whatever. But
and
you know,
I noticed that when he has an when his correct me if I'm wrong, but the actors that he puts in his films more and more, it's like the death knell for their career.
hmm,
Like they have nothing going on, so they just go in his movie. Almost in every case, is an actor that's not a hot actor. It's someone that had a great career 20 years ago. Like classic example, Jeff Goldblum.
hmm.
Probably too easy of an
Well,
example.
wait,
You know, what has he been? What is he?
what Wes Anderson movie was he in?
He was in
Oh,
Asteroid City.
Goldblum. Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm mixing him up with. I don't even know. I'm mixing him up with the guy from Trees Lounge. I don't even know why.
Oh well, he's not in. He's not in any of his
Well,
movies.
that's
Yeah.
why I was confused. Sorry.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But
His
yeah,
career is stronger. Steve Buscemi's career is
yeah.
stronger.
Well, I feel like
Eight,
yeah.
yeah.
Wes Anderson kind of has this retinue of people that he keeps using again and again, and I, I kind of maybe that does
He
constitute.
hires the most irrelevant actors, and I know you're going to say like, well, Tom Hanks and Scarlett
Yeah,
Johansson,
yeah,
but believe me, like their days are numbered. Okay, they're not. They've been on the downswing. After she was killed off in Marvel, it's like, oh,
yeah,
what does that portend? They can be nothing good about that as a foreshadow.
yeah.
And then Tom Hanks, I can't think of one great movie he's been in that wasn't like an indie movie in like 10 years.
Yeah, no, he's totally. Well, I mean that's the thing. I mean Wes Anderson has also kind of been making movies for a while now, and I mean I don't know, it's hard to talk about. I mean it's sort of weird, but like when I was, this is kind of related. Like it's hard to. What I want to say is that like what he's got is this ensemble that appears to be fading in relevance because everyone is sort of fading in relevance. Like I don't really think they're, didn't he have Timothy Chalamet in this movie? Am I wrong? Uh,
I don't remember him being in
I
that.
don't,
If he
maybe
was,
he wasn't.
I don't think he was because they didn't really have anyone in the
Yeah,
typical
wait,
age bracket he portrays.
he was in the French Dispatch though. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, he was in that one. Yeah,
So I
but
don't.
that movie was also really trippy, and it was hard to even make out what was going on.
Yeah,
And Timothy Chalamet's performance in there didn't really stand out just because of how trippy and overwrought the film was,
yeah,
obfuscating.
yeah,
So my rule about it, I feel like still kind of stands because that movie kind of he was barely even in the film in the way that conventionally actors are in films. Like in this film,
yeah.
all the actors were. To be fair about this film, is I liked it more than the French Dispatch because the
Hmm.
characters were represented as people. They
Hmm.
didn't have that sort of. Um, they're weirder because Wes Anderson's been he's become weirder and weirder. I think
Yeah,
as an auteur, but the they had like a minimal personality, but it was palpable. You could really see it.
hmm.
In French Dispatch, it was like almost no personality whatsoever, and it's because they just changed the scenery so damn often, and because
Yeah,
the lines were pointless and made no sense. And this film suffered from that same disease, but it was a relatively benign case.
yeah. Well, I mean, part of
Um,
it may have
French
been that.
Dispatch is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in terms of
Dang.
in terms of having dramatological coherence. It just
Yeah.
was the most incoherent film, and
Hmm.
I'm sure it has a plot, but like so is like the Epic of Gilgamesh. I mean, it's like
That's funny.
you without making it sound like this joke about the Epic of Gilgamesh seems like a comedy because the plot is so fucking dumb that
That's great.
it like this guy wrestles. He I don't know. I can't get into it, but he wrestles the king until they become best friends. It's like kind of he spends like he dies immediately at the end for like no reason. You know,
That's great.
he spends like 10 years doing this one thing for like when he didn't have to. The Epic of Gilgamesh does come off as a comedy if you talk about really fast. A lot of Wes Anderson's films are like that, and French Dispatch is the king of examples.
Yeah.
Um, you know, The Emperor, right? Asteroid City, I don't know, but Asteroid City is a substantial movie. It's just it's not a great movie. It's a good movie, but it's only good because of the. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people would say it's not good.
Yeah.
I will die on this hill saying it's a good film because I think it showcases a way of life that's been largely forgotten about. The
Mm.
characters have very compelling and fairly realistic interactions,
Mm.
and the number of jobs and sort of personalities that is ostensibly depicted is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I don't think he does a good job um, writing their lines.
Yeah.
I don't think and I think that the bad acting that was littered throughout the film
Yeah.
it was just another reminder that the dialogue was kind of choppy, and
Yeah.
the acting really suffered because of it. There's a lot of actors, especially the ones that you don't see a lot. Like I think they had some country singers
Oh, the
doing like some
Cowboys,
roles.
maybe.
Yeah, they have people who like you don't see a lot in film, but are probably musicians and stuff, and they were doing acting,
Yeah.
and they couldn't really deliver their lines that well because
Well, they're not actors. Yeah.
they did the role the pacing combined with the role didn't make sense.
Yeah.
They're either supposed to be say a lot of stuff too slowly, but then they wouldn't. No, but then the second unit director or whatever would be like, okay, you're taking too long. So
Yeah.
then they'd tell him to hurry up. It's like, well, this is like you're giving me a fucking monologue. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but we got like every character has a fucking monologue. Like, okay, every character has a fucking monologue. Now, how do you have every character deliver a fucking monologue, right?
Yeah.
That's this movie. It's a fucking monologue followed by another fucking monologue, right? Followed by another fucking monologue, and it becomes impossible.
Hmm.
Now, that would be cool if you did it for like 20 minutes, but doing, whatever it was, 2 hours of it, it's just nonsense.
Yeah.
And having actors who can't act that well have to do this,
Yeah.
right, in between Tom Hanks and fucking Steve Carell,
Yeah.
that's kind of torture, man. That's literally like, it's like, I wouldn't even want to do that role because I would butcher it.
Yeah.
And then I'll be remembered for like fucking up a scene that everyone else probably could have done, but because I was so green to it.
Yeah.
Nascent actors are not really good and welcome in this film. And to me, this film stings of like this sort of intermediacy, where it's like
Yeah.
everyone is sort of like floating just above the surface
Jeez. Yeah.
of an artistic form. Anyway,
Well. I- yeah.
I'll cancel my tirade for a moment.
I should say I walked out. I went back in, but I walked out like probably a third of the way through the movie, or like 40% of the way through, and I left for like 20, 30 minutes and came back. Because it just wasn't. It was really weird. It like
You had to
wasn't.
walk out. It was
Yeah.
so awkward.
It just, yeah, exactly. It wasn't like straight up bad, I guess, but it kind of was, because what is badness if not like things not really working right, kind of like like I don't know. I mean, I guess a Marvel movie is bad because it's really boring and stupid, but like, this movie was bad because everything was like almost there, but you couldn't really explain, or I couldn't explain or figure out to myself why it wasn't working, but it just wasn't. And it was really like depressing and like disturbing, because like it just sort of showed me that sometimes things don't work and there's no graspable reason why, which was
No,
kind
well,
of
one of the things,
harrowing.
one of the problems was they made it. You're right. They had too many moving parts. The
Yeah.
characters were all going in different directions.
Yeah.
In terms of their
But
maturation, some characters were really settled in.
but he's
Some
done
characters
that.
were
He's done that before, I feel like he's had other movies where it's this
were
whole little
worked.
dollhouse of like 4 or 5 different stages of life and stories, and everyone's got their thing going on. And but like somehow, I mean, The Life Aquatic, I don't think The Life Aquatic is like his best movie, but like it's really it's got like a magic to it that I just didn't really feel while watching this. I mean, what I think is that like this is kind of cliche to say, I guess, but I feel like he's he's getting a bit too much into his own style, and it's getting like annoying. There has to be a balance between the auteur's touch and
It's like when Family Guy,
yeah.
like stops having Seth MacFarlane, so now they make all these Seth MacFarlane jokes because he left the show, and it's
That's
like, why
interesting.
is Family Guy? I don't watch Family Guy to hear jokes about Seth MacFarlane. No,
Yeah,
it's like
it's like too. It's like well, it is in the sense that it's too self-referential, and it's kind of lost. It's like lost touch with reality at all. I mean, even though like the story beats, like, again, the plot was confusing and hard to follow for me. But like, if you look at the plot, then it has something soulful and human about it, like all his movies, which is why I like him as a director. But like, it's like not. It's like smothered by this like fear of reality, kind of like you were saying, like a fear of the banality of everyday life, and so everything has to be like really really artificial and fake. And in fact, what it reminds me of is I read this book where this guy was trying to come up with like theories of the psychological nature of grief, and he said that like the frame like framing an experience or somehow putting boundaries on it is a way of dealing with an overwhelming experience. And I feel like Wes Anderson's movies are like more and more like the frame is becoming like the entire thing. Like you have this like nested and nested stories, and it just gets to the point, and the rigidness and the formality, and like it gets to the point where you can't hear the underlying human message, which in this movie was like, what, you can't wake up if you don't go to sleep. I mean, that's he should take his own advice. He can't wake up because he hasn't gone to sleep, because he has all this stuff like stopping the dream from happening or something. I don't know. Um, but that's what I think about it.
right, right, right. Yeah, it's architectonic to the max, and you do feel
Yeah,
like there's like scaffolding around the building.
yeah,
When you're just trying to watch the building and admire its pristine beauty,
yeah,
and you're like, oh no, the fucking like like the fucking planks of wood and
yeah,
the rebar, like those the rotting planks of wood
yeah,
stacked on rebar, like that's the facade that you get to see rather than the actual
yeah.
you know,
Well,
the sculpted
yeah.
structure.
Well, there's
And
some. Yeah,
the film, it just has, it kind of has two. It's kind of like a poorly decorated cake in a way, like
yeah,
the cake, and then at the same time, the cake you expect, because it's such a magnificent, opulent cake,
yeah.
that it would be style and substance, but it's just style.
Oh
And the
yeah,
cake has got
pure
like
frosting.
rats,
Yeah.
like rat turds in it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Well, I was gonna
Rat
say
turd food.
there's something a little bit disarming and aesthetically and artistically valid to that, showing. I don't know, like that excessive frame. Like I think of that Greek story where the best painter like he painted fruits that were so delicious that birds pecked at him, but the really best painter painted curtains, and so another painter was like, okay, draw the curtains, but the best painter was like, those aren't curtains, I just painted that. Like there's something very like valid to a little bit of meta, but if you do it too much, it it just it defeats the effect. It stops. It's just one sided or something. It just feels like overthinking or
Yeah, you can do the trompe l'oeil, like
yeah,
where you can do a Las Meninas painting, where you have
yeah,
a painting of a mirror that reflects the painter himself,
yeah,
and the paint. You can do that. Um,
and that adds to it.
and then but then that doesn't necessarily, like, and some people will be like, well, that's the best painting I've ever seen because it encapsulates the artist's vision,
Yeah,
like the real art, the vision behind the artist,
yeah,
or whatever, the current, the spirit,
yeah,
the third eye that the artist has. But actually, a lot of people find it kind of hacky,
yeah,
and for whatever reason, there's enough of there's a broad enough niche in the market for people to just throng to these Wes Anderson pictures.
yeah,
And I don't want to be some guy who just like says the same thing over and over again, trashing Wes Anderson, because
yeah,
I do think he is a real auteur, one
yeah,
of the best. I do think he has some great moments in all his
Yeah,
movies,
he really does.
but it's like becoming fewer and fewer, and
Yeah,
really like you're saying, it's threadbare.
yeah.
Or what did you say? You said it was
Um, I don't know, but
what was your term for like when it was just like it was like it's like not even plastered on anymore, just painted.
well, you were
And
saying it's like a cake that's just basically without any. It's just all frosting kind of.
yeah, you
Yeah,
get the fucking chocolate fountains and the icy swans and the fucking
yeah,
little married couple holding hands,
yeah,
and you can yeah, and you get all of that, but it just doesn't have any taste,
yeah,
and it's all static image.
yeah,
It really starts. Honestly, these movies are starting to have the same appeal as the Microsoft Windows screensaver, and
yeah.
without any further ado, man, let's check the time because I don't know how much I can
Oh yeah,
trash this shitty movie anymore.
yeah, yeah. I know it's like we shouldn't do a hate-a-thon. We should talk about something good. All right, we're at 40 minutes, so maybe we can talk about the Godfather now, if you remember it or whatever.
Let me
Or
say, let's do some closing remarks that are positive because
okay,
we kind of have to do the due
okay,
diligence.
that's fair.
For my part, I really liked the costumes.
Yeah,
I adored them actually. I thought they were
mm,
so good,
yeah,
and it was my favorite thing was just like the belts the soldiers wore, the guns, the instruments. The musicians had the hats.
yeah,
Those cowboy musicians wore. Um, the like a fry cook could be captivating.
hmm,
A woman just wearing a frilly chantilly lace dress that could be captivating.
yeah,
Um, Interiors are always spot on. I think for the rather stark era of the 1950s.
yeah,
The Cold War environment was in the Red Scare and all that was pretty respectable as a composition,
yeah,
as a design. I mean, but the composition, including everything else, was just not superb.
yeah,
You had a lot of stale acting, and the people were really expressionless, and they were supposed to be expressionless because they were on a sort of constant surveillance. They had they had some sort of like stark limitation on their maneuverability and social station and everything, physically limited, right?
yeah,
But I still think that they would have acted crazier rather than acted so muted and suppressed.
yeah,
And it was sort of a vaginal film. It kind of felt like there was a lot of sort of like um, kind of ambient, here and there going on, and not a lot of punch, not a lot of action, and it really was trying too hard not to be a Marvel movie.
hmm.
Um,
That's
what we wanted
interesting.
something in the middle, right? We
Yeah,
want a Star
yeah,
Wars. We want, dare I say, Lord of the Rings. We want Indiana Jones. Dare I
yeah,
say, Pirates of the Caribbean.
yeah,
Heck, Game of Thrones. Heck, Star Trek. All good.
yeah,
But like something that's like Marvel, a little over the top with the fucking kinetic, convolutions, and then really it's just all over the place. But this one was trying to be so like subtle. It was trying to be like a Tarkovsky film where it's like every little movement hints at something profound. It
yeah,
was trying to do that, but at the same time, people would talk in rambling sentences anyway.
yeah,
So you kind of got the worst of both. You got the
yeah,
ramblingness, and then you got the fucking slow, boring drivel.
yeah. No,
So
exactly. The worst of both. I
a visual drivel. I mean,
yeah,
not lexical.
yeah,
Lexically, this film was really pretentious, and then visually, it was just sort of um, toned down and dull. Anyway, let's. I can't really say anything good about it, can I? It's really just it's like
well, you
the
tried.
music even was kind of weak. The
Yeah,
music was like sort of unremarkable, unmemorable.
yeah.
Anyway, so what do you want to say? And then we can just go into the
Oh,
Godfather.
just again, like on paper, that's the weird part. Like on paper, it has that like soulfulness of a Wes Anderson movie. Because like I feel like people kind of neglect how his stories are like very bittersweet and deep and like kind of that's honestly kind of the best part. Like I could give or take all the like quirky front facing angle thing. Like I don't really I don't know what that contributes, but like the soul of it is kind of there on paper still. Like if I read the plot summary, I'm sure I'd be kind of like moved a little bit, which is really hard, you know. So I appreciate that. But
Well, this is, and the other thing is like you're saying the plot sounds like it'd be kind of moving, and then you
yeah,
watch it, and it's just total trash.
yeah,
So
it's
conclusively the opposite.
yeah,
But this is the thing is that I think that's also part of the evil
yeah,
is that this film is going to be like fetishized by like historians and journalists
yeah,
and academics of all stripes, feminist scholars, like all that in the next 50 years. It's going to, people are going to look back at it and be like, "Wow, this film was really like, you know, pivotal and had a
mm,
lot to say and it reflected the zeitgeist and
mm,
represented diversity and just all these weird things." Like, it's just going to say a bunch of stuff that wasn't true about it.
well,
Like
yeah,
it was some what do you call it? Not paramount, but it was some sort of
like
landmark,
touchstone maybe. It's
touchstone,
just a
milestone.
synonym, yeah.
What do they call it when it is like it summited some peak, you know, for all mankind to bask in glory for, and it just didn't. It was just it fell flat
That's
for
a
almost
good,
everyone,
well,
except
yeah,
for the most weaselly, squirrely critics you possibly imagine. The kind
uh,
of people you would never want to
yeah,
get a beer with.
yeah,
Those people or champagne, you just wouldn't want to drink with them at all. Do any
generally.
drug. Yeah, it's just they're just out
That,
there people.
that's a great way to put
Those
it.
are the people that are going to approve of this film, and you have to watch out for those types because they're
Yeah.
pretty dangerous.
Well,
All right.
I don't think it was that. Okay, we go on forever, I guess, but I don't think it was that well received. But I mean, I hope it doesn't, you know, grow in prominence as the years go on. I mean, I think that usually, you know, time shakes out the good from the bad, but you know, we'll see. But I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, well, you know, and I hate to we're doing this awkward transition where we're
Yeah. Here,
contrasting
you
like.
can have the last word. I'm gonna stop saying stuff
No,
now.
no, you had the last word. No, I've said everything I need to say. If I say more, I'll just fucking repeat myself, and I just
Um,
yeah.
okay, well,
No, I mean, all I can say is that please, please, please make a better movie, Wes Anderson.
yeah,
Have it in you. Don't listen to the critics. They're lying. Don't listen to your conscience. It's bad. Just, just make a better movie. Make a movie you'd want to see as a kid, not a movie you want to see as whatever middle-aged adult, because that's clearly not working for anyone.
that's great.
So,
That's great. Yeah, that's hell yeah. That's the best possible send off. Okay, so do you remember the Godfather that much? Anything come to mind?
I remember it pretty well. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it more than once.
Yeah,
Um, I don't remember like the angle that the gun was fired in at that cafe
yeah,
when he assassinates the guy. Like I don't know. I remember like every little shot, but I do remember like the scenes, the story.
yeah,
I know the characters, you know, like the back of my hand. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm good.
Um,
I didn't have to rewatch any clips in preparation for this,
yeah.
but
Well,
I could.
I, I
It's not like impossible.
I saw it. I saw part of it once years ago, and I didn't understand it. Which now I don't understand how I didn't understand it because I must have just been really stupid or something. Because it's sort of straightforward. Like you know, maybe the ins and outs of some things are kind of confusing, but it's very stark. The basic beats of everything are pretty stark and solid, and it's interesting. It's pretty much always interesting, and it's always beautiful. It feels like it just feels like it's constant, like one painting after another, or maybe it's not even a painting. Maybe it's just like what a movie should be is just this kind of I don't know that these beautiful scenes that are also interesting. It's you know it's really an amazing movie. It's great. The acting is obviously insanely good too. I'm Marlon Brando, as cliche as it is my favorite actor, I guess, and he's just so interesting. Like you think he's doing all these like
Streetcar Named Desire.
yeah, like you think he's always
The
doing these like
wild one, the wild bunch. Wait, what's the no? It's not.
oh
What's the
that's
one
what
that
where
when
he
he was
was
in the motorcycle?
the really early one. I never saw that one.
I've been meaning to because it's such a classic standout.
Yeah, the
And
wild one. That's
yeah,
it.
the wild one. That's it. And then there's also
On the waterfront.
Uh,
Apocalypse Now.
on the waterfront. Yeah, those three are just like like piece de la resistance, dude. You gotta watch them.
Yeah.
Creme de la creme.
Well,
No,
yeah.
it's hard to find like really captivating noirs
Yeah.
because they're just sort of like it's always like some actor you don't recognize talking to some other actor you don't recognize, but everyone back then knew exactly who they were and they were all excited to see him.
Yeah.
And you're just like, who are these guys? And then they're always like fighting over a girl who's like probably slept with both of them, and they're just sort of like they don't know it yet. And then
Yeah.
it turns out that the woman killed someone, but then one of them tries to cover it up, and then the other guy doesn't, and he kills the guy. It's all like sort of like you can come up with the plots in like a fucking heartbeat. It's like Tin Pan Alley or something. Like literally have people just writing down the whole like the beat sheets for these films, like in the boardroom talking to the executives. They're just like, oh yeah, I can write a movie right now. Let's here. They pitch it just like
It writes itself.
it writes itself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They have this sort of Borscht Bell attitude when they do it. It's really kind of gummy, but Godfather was new. It was actually, despite being like a really old film at this point, like 50 years old almost. Probably probably 50 years old.
Yeah.
55. Despite that, it's technically a new Hollywood film. It's technically a break away from the Hays Code, I guess. Maybe not so much, but it's definitely it's considered in that sort of generational, genre of new
Yeah,
Hollywood, where
definitely.
it's Francis Ford Coppola, right? He went to USC. Like he wasn't a fucking Tin Pan Alley guy,
Yeah.
He was USC. He wasn't, and he didn't he for whatever reason he wasn't obsessed with violating like the Hays Code, but
Yeah.
he which is actually kind of a unique for his generation, but he did.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes Godfather such a great film. It was sort of a compromise between that
Yeah.
old style and the new style coming forth.
Yeah.
Moving in. And I think that's why Godfather really stands up to time, because it was sort of between worlds in terms of what it was conveying and allowed to convey.
That's interesting, because you're right, it's not like obsessed with being transgressive in at all, really. It's just like it feels like Hollywood kind of is still like that's still like Hollywood hasn't gone up to yet another higher level in a sense. It's like that's still the best that can be achieved. That's kind of putting a negative spin on it, but it's just to say that like it's so good that like it still stands out. It like it's more interesting than a lot of movies these days, which again is putting a negative spin on it, but the point is it's really good. And yeah, it does, like, especially the soundtrack, that like sort of epic soundtrack is I feel like that's kind of an old Hollywood thing a little bit, to have this like swelling symphony at some points. um it's interesting. Yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah, and the other thing is, so sorry, keep going with it because I want to see what you say.
Oh well.
You barely said anything.
Yeah, well, I guess
You just saw it, right?
yeah, I just saw it. I guess I could just go into my favorite scenes, I guess. The one that, where he shoots the two guys, that is like, it's so simple, but it's like somehow like so much. It's just so interesting. Like there's it's not tense. Like you don't really feel that nervous watching it, but you just feel like you're just engaged, and it's surprisingly rare for a movie to take some simple elements and craft something engaging without it being so simple that it's like art house and boring, kind of. Because I think a lot of like artsy films try to be, like Tarkovsky.
What are
I
your
guess.
favorite scenes though? Because you're talking about like
Yeah.
the role it played, and I get it.
Yeah,
But,
well,
like, there's
okay.
only so much we can.
Yeah. I guess my favorite scenes then are when he shoots the guys. That was cool, and also when his brother gets gunned down at the stop.
Oh yeah, Sonny. Yeah,
Yeah,
and who plays him is James Caan plays him.
yeah, and just the
James
fact,
Caan's a
yeah,
great actor.
and I guess
Have you
also,
ever seen
yeah,
the Michael Mann film Thief from 1982 or whatever,
no,
1983 maybe?
no, I haven't.
I think it was 1980. I don't. Whatever.
Yeah,
That's a great James Caan sort of performance. Thief. Anyway, so
yeah,
yeah, I mean, The violence is what you liked about it. Interesting. Hmm.
Well, it's funny you say that because like, I I I don't. It wasn't really the violence. It was just like the. I'm not sure. Maybe. I mean, from the traffic stop or what the toll booth scene. Just the way you couldn't see any of the guys' faces, it almost felt like mythical or something. It felt like it wasn't. It's like you were saying, like it wasn't really lurid in a gross way, but it also wasn't. It wasn't too pristine. It was like striking a good sort of middle balance, and also all the scenes with Marlon Brando. They're just great. I mean, just I don't know, just the people's faces almost were just so interesting. I guess 'cause everyone was just acting really well, emoting really well. I guess.
Not only were they acting really well,
Yeah.
it felt like it was the story kind of hinges on the Marlon Brando, character's sort of fates in a way. Like
Mm.
it's a weird film in a sense because you're no one's characters matter that much.
Yeah.
They only kind of matter in relation to Don Corleone,
Yeah.
Don Vito, and like Sonny is important because he's the the eldest son,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe Fredo was. I forget who was I think Fredo was the
Oh yeah.
eldest, but Sonny was this the more established son, and he dies in this really sort of tricky kind of fucked up sequence,
Yeah.
and
Underhanded.
he's killed. He's killed viciously, and it doesn't matter so much that Sonny dies. Who cares about Sonny? What matters is that Vito is upset. Don,
Yeah.
and the whole film
Yeah.
is sort of predicated on your kind of like your sympathy
Yeah.
for Don Vito, and what's his name is also really kind of embroiled into that, rolled into it. Al Pacino's character, I forget his actual name in the
Yeah. I
movie.
don't remember either. Let me look it up.
Yeah, he has a name though that's like it's just like a throwaway name, but
Is it Michael?
it might be. Yeah, I think yeah, exactly. It's Michael Corleone. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And he's very effective. And his ego is not doesn't get in the way of things too often, and
Yeah.
so he's kind of a really important character. He's the most important character, but he's also he emotionally sort of not there.
Yeah.
And so all the emotion just kind of cycles into whatever affects Vito. His
Yeah.
daughter's wedding is immediately at the beginning of the film. His daughter's wedding is rudely interrupted.
Yeah.
He's offended, and it's all immediately about him.
Yeah.
A really strange movie. I think that's why people respect it so much. It's very patriarchal.
Yeah.
Um,
Really
and
is.
when his henchman gets killed, not even his henchman, but his he hired some tough guy. I forget his name. He got strangled
Oh
in a
yeah.
bar.
Yeah.
That affected him because that's like an old friend. It's like
Mm.
everything just sort of cycles back to what he feels.
Mm.
When he's but and then when Michael is betrayed by his not Clemenza but the other one. I think Clemenza sticks around,
Yeah.
but the other one betrays Michael even
Yeah.
though Vito's already died,
Yeah.
and it doesn't even Michael doesn't even care, but Vito would have cared if he knew about it.
Oh yeah. I know. That's Michael's sister's husband, right? I think.
There was an advisor like a consigliere that
Oh yeah. Yeah.
betrayed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was actually reading the plot. I think it's Tessio or something.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he betrays Vito. And I think Vito already had a heart attack at this point,
Hmm.
died,
Yeah.
and so it doesn't. Michael doesn't care anymore. It's not his. It wasn't his goon,
Yeah.
but Vito cares, and that's why the meaning still lingers into that.
Hmm.
So it's a great film because it's established so well. I think it's one of the only films it's kind of defined by its establishing scene, establishing shots.
Hmm.
It's really like bookended extremely well,
Hmm.
and it remains a significant film for that reason. A
Hmm.
lot of it is sort of like not the best. Obviously, the music's all good, the shots are all good. Gordon Willis, excellent cinematographer.
Oh yeah.
It's a
Amazing.
it's a fabulous film, but like really, if it weren't for that first scene, I think everything else would seem sort of aimless,
Yeah,
and sort of just like if you feel like another Who Done It,
yeah. That's a really great point. Because I mean, like you
like a
could,
caper or whatever.
yeah, you could say that you could say that it doesn't really have much plot. It's kind of just this aimless thing that that there's no clearly defined arc. But because I guess because we're so invested in the Godfather, like it we keep caring, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It all kind of cycles back to what his sentiment would be or would have been
Yeah,
in as reactions, and eventually, in the second movie, it actually changes up a bit. It's no longer really about V. I think that's why the film doesn't last very well. Like I think as the film, even the first one goes on, like sorry, the
yeah,
franchise, the trilogy doesn't have a lot of staying power
yeah.
because it really was all about the Brando character.
Hmm.
And then even in the second film, you're sort of seeing him reconstituted as this sort of younger version of himself with Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
And De Niro is one of the greatest actors of all time, of course, but
Hmm.
he doesn't. I don't think he has that same draw that Brando did. And the second film kind of it has more has it doesn't really have the same running start.
Yeah.
It's kind of more of a conventional movie. And
Yeah.
then the third one, it could kind of went in weird directions. There's some incest. It's
Jeez.
hard to keep track of sort of the new all the new characters.
Hmm.
And I think the violent I think it wasn't as produced as well. I don't think it was shot as carefully. But I still like the third one, and I think at
Hmm.
that point Al Pacino kind of carries the show because he's an old man or supposed to be
Yeah.
in the third one, and he kind of he isn't this emotionless character like Michael was. He's a very sort of sentimental character by the time he's in the third film.
Hmm.
The second film is somewhere in the middle,
Hmm.
and you start to see this transition when he has to kill Fredo in the second one. Have you seen
Ooh.
the
No,
second one?
I haven't. I haven't.
Okay, you have to watch all of them because that's just how the story goes.
Yeah. All right.
You have to see the second one because it really is the second one's a lot more about Michael,
Yeah.
and then the third one it doesn't isn't really about anyone, but the third
Yeah.
one it's I guess technically still about Michael, but
Yeah.
the third one's good. It's just it doesn't it's not as meaningful.
Yeah.
I think the third one it was made in like the 90s or something. It was made really late, like the Star Wars was made really like the trilogy was spanned out a lot. The
Yeah.
third Godfather was also like released pretty late in the game,
Yeah.
and it reflected like the mores of that era,
Yeah.
which were kind of degraded compared to like even the early 70s, which was a
Yeah.
little more of a traditional time.
Yeah.
So, or whenever the first one was, actually the first one was probably late 60s, right? 69 or something, but
Let me see.
or 72, or maybe it was 72.
Yeah, 1972.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They
So.
probably would start working on it around 69. Anyway, so the second one and the third one are good, but they're thematically sort of crippled by the fact that the lead actor isn't really there anymore, and the story still kind of revolves around him despite him not making any appearances.
Yeah.
They're really crippled by that. But I still think that they're phenomenally well produced despite that glaring obstacle,
Yeah.
and that's why they're kind of like they're better than Asteroid City. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Certainly.
especially the second one and the third one, they're both better than Asteroid City. Like let's
Hmm.
not pretend that the fall from glory is only so vast. I mean, it was still they're still respectable films.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
I might be wrong about the third Godfather being better than Asteroid City because I haven't seen it in a long time. But from
Yeah.
what I remember, it was way more coherent. It was still in the meaning. The family was still relatively intact.
Hmm.
It kind of made sense that this film would exist.
Yeah.
It wasn't a story you didn't want to see or something. So yeah, I think it was better than the average Wes Anderson film.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really good. It's still a good trilogy. It's just when anytime a trilogy winds down,
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, this fucking what a shit show! It's so hyped up,
Yeah.
blah blah de
Yeah.
da blah blah blah." But the reality is, it's like, is the film really worse?
Yeah.
Than
Yeah.
like whatever whatever kind of hook, line and sinker kind of thing is out there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's like people kind of get used to a certain level of goodness in a thing, and so then they expect it to be like twice as good, and it's kind of hard to it's hard to keep up at the level, let alone to improve even more. It's also hard to it's hard to do a trilogy, you know. There's like there's very few in the whole history of movies where they were all good.
Yeah, and well, you're being annoying to me because you're like, oh well, there's no trilogies where the trilogies are good. I think every trilogy that's made is merits being a trilogy. Like it's
Yeah,
there's more into this world than what's cooked up in your philosophy, Horatio. Like, come on,
yeah. Okay. Good. That's a good point. That's a good point.
more in the heaven than the earth.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like
yeah.
dreamed up
I wanna see
by
two
you.
and three.
Yeah, like even the Transformers trilogy. I guess it's like five now, but
Yeah.
you know,
Pirates of the Caribbean.
anthology. But the trilogy, even that was like respectable.
Yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean, I liked a lot. Actually, honestly, all those movies are good. The only one that gets a little dumb,
Yeah.
like truly, truly dumb, is Fast and the Furious. Because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure in those films, like Vin Diesel goes into like space.
Yeah.
Like it just
Well, that's
becomes like
yeah.
you know
That's
he's
at
like he
least in
literally has
theory.
superpowers.
That's like
Yeah,
charming in its own right, at least from afar. Like I kind of want to. I'm like more honestly, if it were
yeah,
still
it's
in
like
theaters.
funny. At least it has a sense of humor, right?
Yeah. Well, I'd rather watch. I would be more excited to watch Fast X than I would to watch Oppenheimer or Barbie. To be honest, because I feel like I don't know. Maybe it's way worse than I can even imagine.
Yeah,
But
the only problem is that like you're morally like obligated to pirate it because it's
yeah.
like you wouldn't want to pay. No, you're not.
Yeah.
It's
You
like a
would.
crime to charge you money for that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
Like the only reason those Fast and Furious movies get made is so that people don't go and like just go on spree shootings or like drive their cars into a fucking post office or whatever,
That's really
or
great. Yeah.
McDonald's.
Yeah, it's an outlet for society's collective like explosion lust.
There's no real need for it. It's a charitable act. There's no need
Yeah.
for money. Good Christian, virtue signaling. Anyway,
That's great.
yeah, but so what more else is there to say about Godfather Part One? 'Cause-
Hmm. I
did
don't
you
know.
see White Lotus? I
Uh,
feel like White Lotus, the second one is so good. It's on Sicily, so it
wait, the
ties
TV
in
show?
a weird sort of way to the Godfather. Like it just,
Wait,
it's like a girly version of Godfather.
you're talking about the TV
White
show,
Lotus.
right?
Yeah.
I saw a couple episodes and I didn't get it. I didn't like it.
Don't watch the first one. The first one's cool.
You mean the
But
first
the
season?
second one is the first season. Yeah.
All right.
Well, the reason I say is that each season is like a discrete
Yeah.
storyline.
Hmm.
So I don't know if they're making the third, but the second one was like altogether different. Different
Okay.
location, different characters. The only through line is that there's this one character that's pretty annoying in the first one. It's probably the worst character in the first one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in the second one, she ends up being kind of like the best character. Like her
Oh,
arc
okay.
is very, very compelling and intriguing ultimately.
Yeah.
And I think the second one you could just start out watching from episode 1 on the second season.
Okay.
But the first season is a really serviceable prequel to that. So, no matter how you slice it, it's a good time. I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't lose sleep over it.
Oh, so I could just watch either, but probably better start with two, but it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, probably better if you're conscientious of time. Yeah.
Well, and like I said, I didn't really like season one. I saw a couple episodes and didn't appeal to me. But I don't know. I'll just try season two. Screw it. It might be context. Sometimes it's. I mean, shit. I didn't like The Godfather the first time I tried to watch it. So what the hell do I know? Yeah. Oh yeah, and I saw this other movie, The Best of Everything. I really recommend it because it's just
The best at everything.
The Best of Everything. It's this movie from the '60s or something. And
Oh, is it like a caper? What is
No,
it?
it's
Crime?
it's like
Crime?
a romance movie kind of. It's
You
very
didn't watch Dirty Harry, did you?
I did, yeah. I've seen that. It's pretty
We can
good.
talk about that right now because that one's good. Like as
Yeah.
far away from Asteroid City as Godfather is Dirty Harry is
Yeah.
maybe as far away from that. No, I don't know.
It's not Dirty Harry and Godfather are closer if for no other reason than because they're like 70s
Urban
films, yeah, that are
70s
kind of
crime.
basically amoral and violent. But although Dirty Harry is obviously like more vicious, even if not more violent, really. I mean, weirdly.
It's funny. Tarantino wrote that new book.
Oh, for yeah, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Cinema Speculations. No, he wrote a book
Oh,
like on films that like influenced him and sort of
oh, wow,
general opinions he has. And
it's kind of
I
cool.
saw some girl reading it because I haven't bought it yet. I sort of didn't know. I was on the fence. I
Yeah,
saw some girl reading it at this funny coffee shop which has like plants and has swings in it. It's like a
yeah,
goofy coffee shop where you can buy like your plants
yeah,
and hang out by a swing. And I was asking her, like, is that book any good? And she said that like she doesn't know a lot of the movies, but she says it's really good because he writes in his conversational style. He
yeah,
uses a lot of run-on sentences,
yeah,
and I'm like, well, so it's just a lot of old movies he talks about. And she said, yeah, it's like I've never seen Dirty Harry,
yeah,
and I'm like, oh yeah, you have to see that one, yeah.
yeah,
And I realized that like like that's a movie that like it is a classic, but like it is also kind of a film that like is best seen after it's recommended. Like it's not. It's like a weird kind of like The Godfather. You might just see because it's like The Godfather.
yeah,
But
yeah,
Dirty Harry, I feel like, are you just gonna like watch Dirty Harry? No, it's like you have to
yeah,
be reminded that it even exists.
yeah,
So it's pretty out of the ether
yeah.
as like as a film goes. Like that's why I compared it to Asteroid City, I guess, because
Oh,
it's
I
really
see.
doesn't
Yeah,
have. It's not like it doesn't have the same cult. It doesn't have a cultural touchstone.
yeah, exactly. It's not that sort of iconic and
Well,
groundbreaking. I mean, there is that. Doesn't he say like, do you feel lucky or whatever? That like, but you can't. It's not iconic enough if there's just one line. You know. I mean, I feel like The Deer Hunter is kind of at that level of 70s movie with some violence and neo-realistic and but also kind of artistic. Well, sort of. I feel like Dirty Harry is less artistic than either The Deer Hunter or The Godfather, but it's kind of almost like pulpy and schlocky, but it's well made.
well, the Deer Hunters
No,
is
no,
schlocky and pulpy.
no, Dirty Harry is. I think.
Well, I have a sore spot for Dirty Harry because
Yeah,
the opening scene is really kind of a hoot, and
yeah.
then the ending is a riot to me because it's all shot in like Larkspur
Oh
Landing, which
no,
is
I drive by that area every. When I was watching the first movie, I was like, dude, I know that place. That didn't always used to be a dilapidated, rusty ass factory where like,
yeah.
yeah, I can't believe it. It's a freaking bougie mall. This is the place where
Now
Clint
it is. I
Eastwood.
mean, well, it
Yeah.
used to have like six theater, Century Cinema, and now it's
Oh
got
yeah.
no cinema.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
yeah,
It had like a pretty considerable
yeah,
multiplex, and now it doesn't.
yeah.
And of course, the one across the way, the one that Lucasfilm used to go to,
Hmm.
that really was like kind of a big deal for a theater. That one shut down too in Corte Madera by the
Yeah,
highway.
yeah.
So
Oh
now it's
yeah,
like totally just like a redundant kind of place, like in terms
yeah,
of culture, but in terms of shopping, it's like it's still like in its golden age, I guess.
yeah,
Or now it's now in a new golden age.
yeah.
For shopping. Shopping. Ah. I mean, there's God forbid there's a Shake Shack there.
Yeah, no,
I
there
went
is.
and I'm like, and then you go there, it's like all Redwood high schoolers, and it's like, what is
Yeah,
going on, dude?
yeah.
It's like, yeah.
I don't like
So
when places are too nice, to be honest.
I don't mind them if like I don't see it coming,
Yeah,
but
that
if
makes
it's like
sense.
if it's a place where it's just like getting crushed by the economy every year,
Yeah,
more and more, and then eventually you just know it's like, well, something's got to replace it. What's it going to be? Oh, it's like, oh yeah, just like, you know, they're gonna airdrop like a fucking Neiman Marcus and an Orange Julius and a fucking Jake Shack and a fucking
yeah,
Equinox and
yeah.
like some sort of bookstore that sells books but kind of doesn't. You know, they
Yeah,
kind of aren't
yeah,
really. It's like a front for like a tech company somehow. They,
yeah,
they,
yeah.
they have a bookshelf there just in case people want to like you know get a paper cut and then feel like they experience something, feel alive. Okay, from the feel of pulp. So anyway, back to pulp.
That's funny.
Dirty Harry, quite good. Um, uh, Dirty Harry's quite good. I like the Harry Callahan. If you don't even seen Dirty Harry, it's one of those pictures where you really kind of like have to care about the police officer, even though he's just sort of blatantly a piece of shit. But you still have to care about the police officer, and they kind of make a good case for it by having him sort of angry all the time. He's always on the mission. He's always on the beat. He's
Yeah,
where he's driven,
yeah,
and he drives like a wild man. It's a little. They try to make the film a little like Bullet. If you've ever seen that, it's a classic car chase scene in Bullet.
hmm,
I don't even know if it was police department related, but they definitely had like a cop versus robbers scenario in Bullet with Steve McQueen.
hmm.
And in this one, they have Clint Eastwood as Dirty Harry. And I'll have you know that when he was getting really involved in those roles, they made five of these films, I think.
Damn.
Five at most, yeah. And
Yeah,
the one, two, and three, from what I remember, like okay.
yeah,
4 and 5 are like he's like a lot older. It's sort of strange.
yeah,
I guess you could watch it, but
yeah.
like
Well,
I haven't bothered myself.
how about
Um,
which is better, Death Wish or Dirty Harry?
Death Wish is actually better, low key,
Yeah.
because Death Wish is way more consistent.
Hmm.
You get your cheap thrill at the end in all of them, but Dirty Harry, the first one is like a real movie. None of the Death Wish movies are like real movies. You know, they're all B movies,
Yeah.
good ones. But Dirty Harry, the first one is like a tour de force kind of like it actually has like it's actually dramatic.
Hmm.
So like it was a weird thing in the Hollywood like studio decision making where the first one was like really well received and then they decided to just pump out like really shitty like adaptations of that basic premise,
Yeah.
reapplying it to things,
Yeah.
and you realize that like that character Harry Callahan can only kind of work for for like 6 months.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like that in real life, someone like that doesn't just doesn't exist. And so they had to tone it down and make him like more mature in the later ones,
Yeah.
and it became sort of gay, like you know what I mean? Like it became sort of like he didn't really have the verve anymore. Like he was just sort of like a bureaucrat.
Hmm.
He shows his age a lot more in the later films.
Yeah.
And he's slower and he talks a little slower and it just the bad guys aren't as threatening.
Yeah.
He's sort of just he's from what I remember like the villains were sort of like further in the background in the later films.
Yeah.
The reason the first one works actually quite as well as it does is that the Scorpio killer is really scary,
Yeah.
really kind of terrifying.
Hmm.
I think more than anything, the reason that film works is because not really Clint Eastwood, but the villain was made to be like realistic and kind of omnipresent, like a boogeyman.
Huh.
He seemed like he was threatening to society almost as much as he was to like Harry.
Hmm.
Not even Harry, but he was threatening on many more layers than one. Whereas later on, it's all like organized bank robbers that he has to go track down. It's like basically just like bored criminals that he has to like shoot up.
Yeah. It's
Like
not as
it's pretty
symbolic.
cheesy. It's not symbolic at all. It doesn't. There's no justice. It's just sort of the system, ramming its head into itself.
Yeah.
But the first one had sort of like a message,
Hmm.
even though the message was not not something anyone had never heard before. But like still, it was a message that was concrete and discreet. The
Hmm.
later ones they had less and less of a message, and it sort of ambled into like identity politics in the third one, and
Hmm.
they got into sort of like miscellaneous topics. I don't know,
Jeez.
it started to feel like a TV show.
Hmm.
And then Death Wish is quite good because the way he kills people is never realistic, but it's always ingenious. inventing new ways to kill people. It's a very inventive series, and the Hollywood decision making process for that was a lot more. Um, I think realistic, and it's like, yeah, we can make a B movie that sells, and we just remake it over and over again, and just change the details, and people will never get bored. And
That's
for a
great.
while, it worked.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. That's funny.
There's the classic example of like a '70s franchise that just fucked up.
Yeah.
It had like a lot of energy at first. Was it wasn't really Dirty Harry. It was Smoking the Bandit.
I'd never seen those.
That one is like, yeah, why would you? Because it fell off so quickly. But the first one was pretty well received. It was this late '70s film, I think '76, '78, something like that.
77.
'77,
I
right?
looked it up.
'77, and it stars Burt Reynolds, and he's sort of like a bandit who has to smuggle beer across state lines, and it's sort of in like the South, and drives this car really fast. It's like Dukes of Hazzard,
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
even more grisly than that. And the first film was very popular, and then they tried to do a second one. It didn't really take. The
Dang.
third one flopped, and then they made more and more. They're like straight to video, and obviously Burt Reynolds had nothing to do with the sequels. He was like, knowing that guy, he probably, I don't think he even did the second one. I think he was in like a cameo in the second one. So that series, they made like 5 movies, and only the first one was good. Dirty Harry is not as bad as that. Dirty
Yeah.
Harry, the second and third films, you can watch them. They're dumb, but they have like glimmers of meaning. But it's overall it's pretty lousy. But Smokey and the Bandit, from what I understand, because I haven't bothered, apparently it's just like trash,
Hmm.
like way worse.
You mean all the sequels, not the original?
All the sequels. The first one's is also respectable in its own right, but the sequels are just
Yeah.
they're sort of jokes. It's a little like American Pie, where they made like a bunch of sequels that went straight to video,
Yeah.
and then none of the main actors are in those. It's a little like, it's like a lot of things are like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like kind of a good times series. Death Wish is funny. It's funny that you mentioned Death Wish, because Death Wish is nothing of that sort. Like Death Wish is sort of like it's like a comic book movie before there was a comic book movie. It reminds me a lot of The Punisher, or maybe Daredevil. It's a vigilante film, so it's gonna have, because it really it is a comic book style film. It's got like a superhero, effectively.
Yeah.
I,
That's a mild
I
mannered
forget-
guy who has the power.
It was like an architect, like he had like a
Yeah.
cover story, and then he ends up being like Iron Man. Like he's like Tony Stark at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. So that's why Death Wish works. And what I like about Death Wish is that every movie has a different location. Like there's one in Brooklyn in the '80s that's really kind of wild, and it's probably the least realistic. Then again, Brooklyn was crazy in the '80s. Like it wasn't exactly what we'd call realistic even then.
Damn.
And then there's the ones like More Than a Few are in like Los Angeles, and so it kind of I forget Charles Bronson's name, in the actor's name,
Oh,
the character's
the
name.
character's name is Paul Kersey.
Yeah, Paul Kersey. Paul Kersey moves around a lot in those, which is kind of
Well, it's a
kind
bit,
of
it's a
the
bit like
charm-
Taken, where like someone's
it's
always.
better than Taken.
Well, yeah, but
It's
like
better than
it definitely, but it's the same weird thing where like this guy's really unlucky, like this keeps happening to him.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This guy's such a-
Taking is like riffing off of Death Wish,
Yeah.
and Taking is good, but it's they only made like 3 of them. It wasn't as popular.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems popular. It's more popular now, but I don't think it was as successful in its own time. I don't know. I'd have to like crunch the numbers, and I don't really know how to do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, how are we for time? Because we're
we're-
supposed to talk about Godfather.
Yeah, we're at hour 23.
That's pretty good. I mean, do you want to say more about The Godfather? Like, who are your favorite actors? Did you like Diane Keaton? Did you like Robert Duvall? Did you like
I think
Fredo's?
I-
Oh,
that guy was in Deer Hunter too, John Cazale or whatever.
I was supposed to say John Cazale. Yeah, and he died like shortly after The Deer Hunter.
Jeez.
And
Yeah.
he was married to Meryl Streep.
Wow. It was
Or
kind
Meryl Streep was married to him.
it was kind of funny to see that guy because I haven't watched a lot of '70s movies, and then just seeing the Deer Hunter, and then seeing this same little weirdo like pop up in this movie. And I don't have to speak ill of the dead, but he's a bit of a character actor, I think, because he's just got an interesting sort of look to him. And so yeah, he was all right. He didn't really stand out to me that much because I was so preoccupied with just I guess the way he looks or something. But Dan Keaton did surprise me. I kind of expected her to be flatter than she was. But it was mainly Marlon Brando and Al Pacino. Actually, Al Pacino, like you were saying, he was kind of too reserved to really be that interesting. He had like the quiet intensity, but like that's not terribly interesting. I don't know if James Caan or Caan. I don't know if he was really that good. I don't know. He didn't seem that amazing to me. Part of it is just he didn't really look that Italian. But yeah, it's mainly Marlon Brando then, I guess. But yeah, I gotta see the others.
All right, well, let's end it there. I think we've said all that we can. Godfather. It's also a good introduction to like the Italian American sort of thing,
Yeah,
La Casa Nostra. It's a very, uh, it's very charming. I feel like if you're into Italian studies or learning Italian or traveling to Italy for any reason, work or play,
yeah,
Godfather is a kind of a must see to get your bearings. And Francis Ford Coppola, everything he's made, I've enjoyed.
yeah,
But that one is probably his best film by
yeah.
far. So, all right, let's move on.
All right. Um. All right. Well, I guess I'm just gonna click stop then. Cut this part out.